Well, I think we're over our IT glitches. Right, should we start again?
Yeah, I think we better should.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Michael Barker. I'm here representing FruitNet, Fresh Produce Journal, Eurofruit, Asia Fruit. So kind of looking at the market both from a UK perspective but also from the US side.
Okay, we just sat in a very interesting conversation about food waste,
Yeah.
which was majoring on companies,
Yep.
fresh produce companies and food waste, and we both agreed at the end that it was really interesting what they were doing. They had a speaker from Australia, a couple of speakers from the States, but they didn't actually talk about food waste to the consumer.
Yeah.
I'm sure I heard it from yourself or one of your esteemed publications. In the UK, 1.2 million bananas are thrown away every day by the consumer. So, but actually, it's a really good point they made. I spent all my time trying to sell fresh produce and sell the consumption of, but actually we've also got this other issue at the other end about throwing it away, the consumer throwing it away because they're not educated to it.
I think there's a bunch of angles really. One is they always talk about how much is wasted at the farm gate, and I feel like I've been hearing this same statistic for I don't know how long, 10 years or whatever it is. I'd be really interested to see how well we're monitoring where we are at now, because I mean, we constantly hear what UK producers are doing, whether it's sending their stuff to Fair Share, whether it's adding value, whether it's producing like what Branston are doing or Naylor Farms or some of these guys that are taking veg and processing them into interesting new ways. I feel like we must be at a stage where the industry is reducing food waste quite substantially versus what it was 10 years ago, and I would love to see some figures on that.
But also, again, I'm sure I read it in one of your publications that there's so much profitability held up within the supply chain. Growers don't want to give money away. They're not going to be. And I know sometimes there's whether it be weather pressures or customer pressures, but as a whole, they don't want to be big. So they're going to be running a tight ship.
And there's always this issue to do with specifications, isn't there? And our supermarket specifications too tight? And we heard it again in the talk today. They talk about wonky veg or perfectly imperfect. I'm not really in favour of these terms because it kind of reinforces to consumers that there's something wrong with these things. Maybe that just needs to come more into the mainstream. As long as these products are good quality, is it a different standard tier or something, rather than that we're packaging up that there's almost something that we should be put off by these
well, perhaps someone out there what might know to my point about is there much going on about consumer food waste?
It doesn't seem to be. No, it feels like there's a lot more to do on that end in terms of education, and I mean, I don't know whether these smart fridges are going to help and stuff. We saw quite an interesting product here on the show floor, which is a company that have created an avocado sensor, basically, and they're selling it to supermarkets. And you pick up your avocado and you put it on this sensor, and it AI scans it, and it tells you how many days of whether it's ripe to eat now or it's ripe in 3 or 4 days, and then you can pick up the produce depending on whether you want to use it straight away or whether, and it's a whole food waste concept, and they're expanding it to other products, and the whhole idea is that especially when you're buying loose products, you're going to be able to.
I'm smiling because when I interviewed your colleague Chris White the other day, and he was saying we've just got to have more. There's got to be more presence in the supermarket of selling to the consumer about. Madam, sir, this avocado is. What are you looking for? Dinner party 2 days time. Right, you need these.
Well, these kind of technologies are kind of things that, to tie into Chris's talk, that maybe supermarkets are not doing well enough at making retailers interesting for us. That kind of technology adds a bit of, we were talking about theatre, but it's a bit of fun to the aisle. So, I can scan my product. Oh, look. And just having more technology around the place that makes fresh produce interesting and a bit more interactive could really help, I think.
Yeah, and talking of fresh produce interesting, what if there'll be a lot of people dialed into this from UK and Europe who can't make it here, but they'll want to know from us as to what we're seeing here that could be beneficial to UK Europe, and likewise what might be beneficial here from what's your takeaway? What do you think we should be telling people that what we've seen here that will revolutionise their businesses?
What I like about the American produce industry that I think that we are looking, and I think they can learn a lot from us, we can learn a lot from them. What we can learn from them, I think, is about adding value to products, making them more interesting, and making them more tasty. Americans are amazing at taking foods from other parts of the world and putting their own spin on them, whether that's adding spices, whether it's new formats, more convenience.
Talk about your cookie.
I had a cookie earlier that was a cabbage cookie. And it tasted exactly like a cookie. It sounds absolutely horrendous, but it wasn't. They didn't appear to be making any health claims that this was one of the 5 a day or anything. But it's just the kind of thing. Like we have a real problem with vegetables, for example, in Britain, in that we boil them to the inch of their life. They're boring to eat in some cases. We don't add flavour to them. You go to Asia. Asia Fruit just a couple of years ago was in Thailand. I took a couple of extra days. What they do with veg in Thailand and make them absolutely delicious. You know, you could become a meat eater just because they're making them so flavourful, and we just don't do it well enough in Britain. We don't make veg delicious. It's almost, it's a chore a lot of the time to eat it. We should be making it absolutely delicious.
So if we could wave that magic wand and make that more exciting in the UK, whose responsibility is that? Is it the grower? Is it the marketeer? Is it the retailer? Or is it everyone?
It's all of them. Retailers got to be willing to stock it. Growers could be coming up with these formats, and it is starting to happen. A lot of these trends that you see in the US do start to come over to the UK. Take cauliflower, for example, which was completely out of fashion in Britain 5 or 10 years ago. It's something that's quite big in the States, and it's starting to, that trend's coming back to, and we're finding more ways to eat it. We're roasting it, we're putting more herbs and spices on it, and realising it just doesn't have to be this sort of bland side of plate chore, and it's actually something that's very delicious. And I think that is the way that we're going to get veg consumption in particular up in Britain.
Okay, next one on the back of our talk here, sustainability. Sustainability in regen ag. Do you think we're ahead in the UK and Europe in comparison to the States?
I do, yeah. I think what we're doing in Britain, both voluntarily and through demands of supermarkets and increasingly legislation, is I think we're in something of the forefront in terms of sustainability. I think we're doing some really, really good stuff across the board. Every business you talk to is thinking about it. We're seeing more and more businesses following science-based targets, measuring their carbon footprints, net zero targets and so on. And it's driven by both from the supplier themselves and the retailer. But you worry that the legislation becomes too demanding. We saw this week that WRAP is calling for the packaging ban, and that's such a two-sided argument. I did an interview with the CPMA, the head of the CPMA in Canada earlier this year, and it's a real problem for them because the Canadian government wants to fully ban packaging on all fruit and veg. It's happening in France as well. And we all know that the arguments against doing that from a food waste perspective, these things are all interlinked, and it's really, until somebody can develop a fully, very rapidly biodegradable plastic, I think this is going to be a topic where the industry and regulators butt heads for quite a long time, and it's very difficult to find easy solutions.
Okay, and to wrap up, what excites you? What excites you about the next 3-5 years in this sector? Because you're very well travelled and you speak to a lot of people. What excites you about the future?
This is just such an interesting industry, and I bet you get exactly the same thing. You tell people that don't understand that you work in fruit and veg, and they sort of laugh at you, and then you explain it to them, and you say it touches sustainability, it touches politics, it touches absolutely every topic you can think of. We all eat fruit and veg. Even your biggest junk food aficionado eats way more than they realise. If you eat at McDonald's buys more lettuce, tomatoes, onions, than if you just eat pizza. All the toppings are fruit and veg. It's the biggest aisle when you walk into the supermarket, and there's so many themes tying into it. It's constantly something new to report on, and interesting characters and personalities that really care about what they're doing.
It's a global family, and the IFPA have done very, very well. We were talking about Kathy earlier about how she's a real statesman in the sector. So come on, let's wrap up with my normal jingoistic. What's your favourite fresh produce?
My favourite fresh produce, I love cherries. I eat a lot of cherries. What else am I a big fan of? Pineapples, big fan of those. I'm eating more apples than I've ever eaten before. Okay. Just enjoying the different varieties that there are now and flavours and so on. So and I'm getting more into veg. I'm eating more veg than I ever have done. Which, as people know me, 10 years ago I had a bit of a reputation as a junk food aficionado. I'm ashamed to say, and you can't work in this industry without changing your diet a little bit. So.
Well done, and thank you very much for everything you do for the sector.
My pleasure, and thank you for all of this.
No.
Appreciate it. Cheers,
well
thanks.
Well done.
Nice one.